Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank for Disney Royalty, number 10, Tangled, Rapunzel, and Flynn slash Eugene. So, Tangled is a bit of an oddity. In a lot of ways, it feels like Disney's attempts at actually making Shrek, if you think about it. And not just like the first Shrek, it's all sort of like maybe Shrek 1 and Shrek 2, but in the way Disney sort of could, there's a lot of cynicism, to it, by Disney standards, really, mostly shown in, I want to say, Flynn and Mother Gothel, just in sort of how not only do they view the world, but as they're sort of like the people that sort of question the logic going on here, especially Flynn, who sort of questions why everyone's singing. Everything is sort of weird to him. And you could view Shrek and Fiona as a sort of weird parallel to Flynn and Rapunzel, just because Rapunzel and Fiona have this sort of idea as to how things should go, more Fiona than Rapunzel, and then you see Shrek and Flynn have a sort of more realistic and it's also a bit more selfish viewpoint, but you understand where they're coming from. It's hard to imagine what Disney would be like without DreamWorks at this point, totally ignoring the history that led to DreamWorks being created, which does involve Disney. It feels like Rapunzel, or just Tangled as a whole, after Princess and the Frog, was sort of trying to pose the question: how do we tackle the Disney fairy tale now? Because at the time of the Renaissance, DreamWorks and even the Pixar studios were just sort of pipe dreams. They were never the kind of big giant that they are now. And granted, Disney has absorbed Pixar into the collective. Tangled is a bit unique when you compare it to other films, and maybe Princess and the Frog as well is unique because we have two characters here, and even the villain, who comes from a very unique place that other characters don't come from. Everyone here comes in with a very clear objective, and in a lot of ways, no one really is the bad guy until like the sort of peak of the movie. Mother Gothel is a very unique experiment with a Disney villain, and I may do a series on Disney villains. I just may, but it won't be like this because that'd be redundant. With Mother Gothel, she has a bit more in common with Frollo, and the fact that they both sort of find themselves in this position of having this new person to take care of, to look after, and neither of them do it for the best of reasons. This isn't the story of Tarzan, where someone in a bad situation finds a new connection with someone. No. Well, Frollo takes Quasimodo in because the Archdeacon guilts him into it by saying, "You just killed his mother," and right in front of Notre Dame. Dude, the statues, the eyes of Notre Dame, the eyes of God are watching you. What are you doing? And he takes Quasimodo in, even names him Quasimodo, to sort of not just to dehumanize him, but also he is taking him in under the idea and with the belief that one day this creature may be of use to me, one day. And so he indoctrinates Quasimodo, not just in following the Catholic Church, but also Frollo's view of the Catholic Church, which is to fear anything that's different. And he views Quasimodo as different. Quasimodo lives his entire life thinking he's ugly, misshapen, and hideous, and the outside world would soon as tear him apart, which it did sort of in the beginning. With Mother Gothel, it's just as manipulative, but a different kind of manipulative. Because Rapunzel is, not hideous and ugly. She is instead taught that the world is even more frightening, and that she's not equipped to handle it. It's a very realistic thing. But the difference is where it's coming from, as well as a certain sort of subtlety to it. So, Mother Gothel is afraid of dying. Okay, she's very much afraid of dying. She uses Rapunzel to stay alive. And remember, in this film, she did not intend to kidnap Rapunzel. She intended to get her hair. It's like, okay, I get her hair, and then I'll maybe plant the tree again and whatnot. Oh, if I cut the hair, it just dies. No. And then she's pushed to take Rapunzel, still keeping her named Rapunzel. And this is sort of where it gets a bit interesting. She's a very manipulative person. She's very good at sort of insulting Rapunzel. And then it's like, "Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Look, I see in that mirror? I see a beautiful, strong, confident woman. Oh, and there's you, Rapunzel." And even talks about how she's putting on weight. And I'm like, oh, it's just a joke. And when they have an argument, she's like, "Now I'm the bad guy." And it's ultimately Mother Gothel that actually ends up scaring or even pushing Rapunzel into leaving. because at some point she just is sort of done with the idea. When Mother Gothel says you are never leaving this tower, it hammers home to Rapunzel that she will never. There's nothing that she could ever do that will let her leave the tower. So she breaks out on her own. And in reality, if Mother Gothel had been more willing to say, okay, well, you'll go out with me, and we'll go somewhere not the kingdom where everyone's looking for you, go in the opposite direction. I think that would have worked. But Mother Gothel is she's too paranoid. She's too paranoid because, she's been alive that long, and when you realize that the secret to your quote-unquote immortality relies on you being able to brush some girl's hair while singing, or one of you has to sing, you kind of want to play it safe. And she's very set on trying to not be the bad guy. That's something I really like about it. It reminds me a bit of the fairy godmother in Shrek 2, where, she doesn't view herself as the bad guy, but it really, really did feel that maybe, and maybe this was confirmed, maybe it wasn't, that the fairy godmother's the one that cursed Fiona. Just saying. Just saying. And then, as the movie goes on, we see that the fairy godmother is the bad guy. She is a bad guy in a way. And that's actually my favorite scene with Mother Gothel. Despite all her manipulations, even like trying to convince Rapunzel that, Flynn/Eugene doesn't love her. Like, no, he doesn't care about you. He just wants the satchel. He just wants the crown. It's really great at the end when she's exposed, like, you want me to be the bad guy? Okay, now I'm the bad guy. And she chains her up. It's like, we didn't have to do this. I had a totally different way to do this. And that's also something Frodo does at the end. By the end of it, he's realized that he can no longer control Quasimodo. Mother Gothel realized she can no longer control Rapunzel by, being the quote-unquote nice guy, so chained up. And there's also a bit of Ursula to Mother Gothel. The sort of manipulation, the sort of big theatrics. This movie doesn't really do big theatrics. It does it in sort of the beginning, but everything else is sort of very, very subtle, a bit more intimate. And I like that. I like that when that works, especially because it's also played along the sort of big antics. Everything isn't as big as it would be in a conventional Disney film. Like, for example, the song I've Got a Dream, if Disney would do that before, the I've Got a Dream song would be a bit more abstract. Even if other people are singing about their dreams, there'd be some abstract to it. And there'd be this huge, bigger setting. We would have totally dragged out the Disney orchestra for this. And I'm kind of glad they didn't. It makes it feel a bit more real, which is a bit weird. But it is something that is nice to see, and it's a bit enjoyable. It adds a certain charm to this movie. Again, Tangled feels like this experiment with the Disney formula. Like, we're seeing what DreamWorks is doing, what Pixar is doing, and maybe Princess and the Frog shows that people still like what we do, but maybe we should try to incorporate other things. Try to play around with it, see what we can, see what bends, what breaks, and whatnot. And I think Tangled might be the best example of that, even now. Coming up to our Prince and Princess, Rapunzel is interesting. Like a lot of her contemporaries after the Renaissance era, she does fall into her own sort of mold. She's very much a Ariel with a dash of Belle to her. And even further back, she reminds me a bit of Princess Aurora. There is something unique about Rapunzel. It's not just the magic in her hair. She seems to have an innate command of a situation. It's very hard to, get her off her feet. It takes a lot to sort of surprise her or make her panic. And I think it's just because she spent a lot of time sort of trapped inside her own head that the outside world doesn't really get her as much as one would think. Her dreams are a bit more focused. She sort of wants to live each day one dream at a time. That's actually really awesome if you think about it. Where Ariel and Belle have these sort of, with Belle it was the abstract, I want this great adventure and, what I really want is a friend, and she gets both of those. Ariel has this sort of idea about wanting to be part of this whole new world, but Ariel's passions sort of drive her a bit too far to make a bad decision, and she sort of gives up control to Ursula, and then she's sort of put in a different position where she gets exactly what she wanted. With Rapunzel, she doesn't get exactly what she wants. She gets a bit more, to be sure, but there's also a lot of fear with the idea, like, she's dreamed her whole life of seeing these lights, and what if it's not as good? And she's then encouraged, like, well, after I get this dream, after I accomplish this dream, I get to accomplish another, and another. There's a lot of the Disney spirit to it. You never stop dreaming, never stop climbing. that is sort of what Rapunzel is. She's in a lot of ways the definitive Disney dreamer because of that. Sort of in the lines of like Cody from The Rescuers Down Under. But when you meet Rapunzel in present day after she's like the most adorable baby ever, we see that she starts her days off in the pretty active way. You know, she does her chores, she cleans, she mops, she does her hair, and then she pretty much engages in artistic endeavors. You know, she paints, she knits, she does a puppet show, she plays an instrument, and she reads and reads and reads. She's very much a Renaissance era woman, which is something Emma Watson said she wanted to be, and I think it's a bit weird. Not because she said that. That was actually like one of the best things I think Emma Watson's ever said, that she wants to be a Renaissance era woman. I love that. But the fact that Mother Gothel is very set on educating, well, not even like personally educating, but sort of giving Rapunzel as many tools as possible. I get the idea. Keep her happy so she won't want to leave. But the problem is, if you don't try to control what she reads or what she sees, she's only going to want to see the world more. That's actually sort of the beauty of what the tower is. You know, Rapunzel is someone who's waiting for her life to begin. She wants that big moment to go out there, to be where the people are, you know? And the tower, on the inside of the tower, is sort of her mind. It's where she shapes all these ideas. She paints them. She paints the light. She paints herself there. She paints Pascal there. Pascal is a very great callback to many a silent animal companion. Not Miko. Not Miko. We're thinking more characters like Samson, like Sparks, which is the fly in Rescuers Down Under. I hope I got his name right. There's a bit of a wit to him, a bit of a fun to him. And the horse Mulan, that is Pascal in a nutshell. But on the outside of that tower is sort of reality, but it's sort of plain and dismal. But you get the idea, the stone that keeps her out there, that she can't color, that she can't change, are sort of the insecurities that you and I have, the fears we have going out there. Even when Rapunzel is finally able to leave, she hesitates on the stones. And then when she gets out, she's able to sort of take it all in. And then she has a bit of a panic attack, like, I'm the worst daughter ever, best day ever, I'm never leaving the tower, I'm never going back. You know, it's all fun. There's a very well-written energy to Rapunzel. It goes a bit further off in the abstract in later films, but this is a very good focus of energy for her. And then, again, she doesn't get exactly what she wants, but the fear she has, and the fact that she's almost gotten people killed, is something that hits her home. She's very aware of what this has cost people. And then, of course, there's her relationship with Flynn. And she doesn't quite need it, but it is sweet, and you could argue it's a bit unhealthy. It's sort of like the arguments people made about Ashi and Jack. The fact that Ashi knew nothing of the world but what Jack told her and what Aku told her. And then between the two extremes, she doesn't find a happy middle. And with Rapunzel, she has the same thing. Also with Quasimodo, with the same thing too. But that's for another time, I think. What Rapunzel is really good at is living her dreams. I know it's sort of like a weird thing, but to me, what makes Rapunzel great is that it never feels like there's anything she can't do, because she's gonna go out there and do it. And she's got a good head on her shoulders. She knows how to talk to people. She has oddly really great people skills. And there's a certain innocence to her that you really only saw in Disney, not just in the early days, the golden era with Snow White, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, but again with Ariel. When Ariel couldn't talk, and when she was just relied on the expressions, that is Rapunzel in a nutshell, really. She's this huge spitfire of emotion, wanting to experience everything. She wants to consume all happiness and sadness, use it as her stepping stone. She wants to, see the world. And it all happens because some ruffian ends up in the tower. Coming up to Flynn / Eugene, Flugene, you Flynn. Oh, someone's gonna hurt me for that. I can imagine it already. Flynn is an interesting character because he's very much Aladdin, he's very much Naveen, he's very much O'Malley the Alley Cat. These sort of slick, sly characters who are very good at playing the long con. Know how to talk to people, know all the angles, or know how to create the angles. but he also has a degree of cynicism to him that characters like Aladdin didn't have, but Naveen sort of had. And the fact that they knew that people were not as good and decent as they thought they were, but there's also a bit of charm to him. It's clear that Flynn models himself after his childhood hero, which I think was obviously just supposed to be a play off of Errol Flynn. You know, the idea that he has a sort of confidence, he can do whatever he wants. He's the master of his own element, the master of his own universe, so to speak. And Flynn wants to be that person. He wants to go on those adventures and do whatever he wants. And the problem is he sort of is trying to compare that, or rather rationalize that with his orphan heritage, with the fact that, not heritage, orphan upbringing. That he wants the aesthetic a bit more because he's never had that. He's already gone off and, made the cons, become a legendary bandit. He's probably gone on plenty of adventures going by the animated series. I think that goes without saying. But it's left him a bit jaded. And it's not sort of jaded where he thinks everyone's out to get him, but the fact that, all that matters at the end of the day is what he wants and his goals. And there's a bit of Shrek to that. Shrek is very content to live on his own, to be on his own, but that's also because of how he's been treated. But once he meets people like Donkey and Fiona, he sort of wants to not be alone, but doesn't want to admit it. With Flynn, he sort of comes to terms with it because he's met someone that has an ulterior motive, that has lived a life that's in a lot of ways worse than his. Yes, Flynn was an orphan, but he got to go places. There was no limit to what he could do. No one was stopping him except a lack of funds. With Rapunzel, her own quote-unquote mother was stopping her. She wasn't allowed to leave. 18 years of her life, she'd effectively been a prisoner of her own family, quote-unquote. And he sees something in her that he feels needs to be protected. There's a bit of Lady and the Tramp to that. There's an innocence and a light to Rapunzel that Flynn feels needs to be protected because it has an impact on him as well. And we see that these two do have an impact on each other. The fact that they're both willing to trade something away to save the other. Rapunzel is willing to trade her freedom. Like she says, I'll never try to escape if you let me save him. She's giving up her freedom, and Flynn gives up his life. The one thing that I think he's always valued over anything else was his own safety, his own personal needs. For her, they've become each other's new dream. They can peacefully go off into that horrible life of enslavement or that gentle darkness, knowing the other is going to be safe. Overall, that is what I think Tangled is. It's a dream that sort of changes and keeps going. Tangled is a promise that there is something great coming from Disney, from its animated films. And it's not just the princess films, it's like films in general. There was a definite sort of lack in quality after the Renaissance, before the revival. I think we can all agree with that. And with Princess and the Frog was the idea that, hey, we remembered the dream. We remembered how important it was. And Tangled sort of says, well, we can take that dream and go further. And we can change that, but still hold core to those truths. And there's something beautiful about that. Tangled isn't a perfect movie, to be sure. It falls into some of the old trappings of older Disney films. And the celebrity voices can be a bit obvious, but after you hear it, it's hard to think of anyone else that could do it differently. It just is what it is. But I think that beauty really does hold true to Tangled. And I think it's best shown in how these two characters interact. And our boy Maximus. Maximus is like, if Puss in Boots had to have a horse, it would be Maximus. He's like Javert, but for Disney. Love it. So let's talk about parallels. So for Rapunzel, it was a bit tricky. I had to think, who is someone who lives their life one dream at a time, one adventure at a time, where everything is an artistic pursuit and it's all just great? And I thought, it's Mabel Pines. It just is. It just has to be Mabel, unless someone else can think of a better one. Challenge issued. Name a better one in the comments. And for Flynn / Eugene, Flugen, Floop, Flem, one would think I would go backwards and pick Phoebus or Feeble. No, we're not doing that. We are picking Han Solo. Well, Han Solo is nothing but a cynical jerk who in the beginning is after himself. He does this because there's a reward for him at the end. But then he becomes a part of the rebellion. He becomes a part of this huge fight. And it's not in part to Luke so much as it is Leia. You know, he meets someone who challenges him, who inspires him to be better. And it's a bit of a hassle for Han to really admit that or even try that until Empire Strikes Back. And even then, their relationship is actually really, really sweet until you get to the Disney canon, in which case you kind of want to burn it all down. But anyway, with that in mind, let's bring this video to a close here. If you're new to the Bucket Think Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. Check out some other videos on this channel as well as a series. Really fun stuff. And I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. May your fandom serve you well.